Welcome to the network, the educational podcast designed to help our community navigate the four areas of life that I like to call the funky four corners. I've had the opportunity to interview some of my favorite people with one goal in mind: to help the spiritual, physical, mental, and financial health of our people as we navigate this thing called life. Subscribe to the network. You never know, you might need it. It's been a little while. It's been a little while, but we're back. Listen, in the words of the great American poet, Eunice Kathleen Wayman, you probably know her as Nina Simone. You don't have to live next to me. Just give me equality. Everybody knows about Alabama. Everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn. This is the network, the educational podcast designed to help our community navigate spiritually, physically, mentally, and financially. I am your host. My name is Michael Prejean. Today in the Funky Four podcast studios, we have the world-renowned African American and Diaspora Studies Department Chair at Xavier University of Louisiana, Dr. Sharlene Sinegal DeCuir, DECUIR. Okay, so we are here to bring you Black history in bite-sized pieces, also known as the Funkiest 15 Minutes in Black History, aka Dr. Sinegal DeCuir's History Quarter. Doctor, how are you today?
I am doing well. You know, I can't get over the fact that you always announce me as the world renowned. I'm like, child, I'm just here in Louisiana. Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about where people can find your work. You have published works, correct?
I do.
And where can people find those published works?
Well, if you just Google me, they're all over the internet. You can find me everywhere. So you can find my articles. A lot of my articles are, accessible through Google. My dissertation. I just had a chapter in a book called Black Democracy. And so you can find a lot of that stuff online.
World renowned, like I said. So have you been published in any major publications that right offhand people will know exactly what you're talking about?
Yes, Journal of African American History, which is the number one publishing for a person in, my field. Yeah. So when I say world renowned, I mean world renowned. So listen, before we begin and jump into this thing, if people want to keep up with you, Dr. Sinegal DeCuir, where can they keep up with you? I am on social media. I have a public page on Instagram, and you can follow me there. I do have private pages as well on Facebook and Instagram. But, I got to know you because I got my private stuff on there. But the public one is for everyone. So check it out. And then, of course, you can go to xula.edu and look me up through Xavier.
The world renowned Wine Alley's finest. For those of you, like they say, if you know, you know. Okay, Dr. DeCuir, before we dive into today's topic, who are you giving flowers to while they can still smell?
My mother, Betty Jane Mouton Sinegal. She is the best mother a girl could ever have. She is not college educated. She sacrificed her whole life to make sure that my sisters and I would become who she knew we would become. And so she deserves her flowers today and always. And I love her. She's the best mother ever.
Flowers to Betty. So let's get some context for those who may not know. How many doctors does Betty have?
2. So
Betty,
my older sister, yes, she's an MD. I'm a PhD. My twin sister has an MBA, and my little sister sells real estate. And
let's go. Let's go, Betty. Okay, Dr. Sinegal DeCuir, we are here today to talk about the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So let's dive right in. The funkiest 15 minutes of Black history. Go.
All right. So obviously we know a lot about the 65 Act. We know everything about Martin Luther King. We know the marches, and we also understand that it is a 15th Amendment right. But what we don't understand, or what a lot of people don't understand, is how that right has been infringed upon throughout history. And so, first of all, it was infringed upon in 1890. We had Plessy versus Ferguson and all those segregation laws that enfranchised or disenfranchised African Americans. Then in 65, we got those rights back. And in 65, it was very expansive. And so what happened was the 65 Act eliminated racial barriers to voting. So no more poll taxes, no more literacy tests, no more grandfather clauses. And that was absolutely needed for African-American people to get back in and vote. It allowed millions of Black people to start voting once again. And then the second thing that this act did was it gave the federal government the power to regulate voting districts and offices in states. And so basically what it did was it caused all of the southern states, the deep southern states, they had to get approval before they changed any of the regulations to their voting rights, which was great. Because now a state could not just enforce any type of law that they wanted, like a poll tax or a grandfather clause or a literacy test on people, right? The third thing that it did was it increased the representation for African Americans, obviously, because when African Americans started to vote, we also decided that, hey, we can win and run political offices because now we have the voting power behind us, right? We have other Black people that are voting in our own interests as well. So it helped out in many of those different cases. Now, what happens is that in 2013, there's a challenge to this Voting Rights Act. And that challenge was a court case, Shelby County versus Holder. And so what that court case did was it basically said that Section 5 of the 1965 Act was unconstitutional, which means that now states no longer had to be go through the federal government to change any kind of voting right restrictions to their state and local voting, districts. So basically what this means is that now you have states that have implemented laws like voter IDs, state issued voter IDs, which is a huge problem because in a lot of POCs, persons of colors, communities, some people don't have money to purchase those state issued IDs. There's also been, voter rolls have been purged. And a lot of the state and local governments say that they are purging these because they are updating the rolls. Well, this causes confusion within the voting, going down to vote. Now your name is not on the roll and you have been purged, right? And you don't even know that you're purged. So that, again, causes issues with voting. And then, of course, there are other things like in Latin communities, there are not language, ballots, right? And in some, again, African-American communities, there are not people who are there to help and assist elderly people who cannot read and write, but they still want to vote, right? And so there are all these issues now that come about as of 2013 that many African-American people don't know that is causing Black people to not vote. They're closing polls early. They're closing sites of polling that are in African-American neighborhoods. And we all know that a lot of African-American people and people of color, they work long hours or they work jobs that are not a 9-to-5 jobs per se. And so if you have a poll that is closing at a certain time, well, then the workers don't get off in order to go and vote. And then there's the barriers of the identifications. You have to have a state issued identification. You can't just go in there with your birth certificate or social security card or whatever the case may be. They want an issued state ID for the state that you are voting in. Right. So all of these things have caused issues within the elections. And we see this playing out day in and day out, especially in the previous election that we had with the current president of the United States, right? We saw lots of districts where there were predominantly African Americans being thrown out because of different rules that were made by state, right? We see gerrymandering where racial votes are diluted so that the political power in the state continues. And if that political power in the state continues, 9 out of 10 times, that power is now translated nationally. That is why we have red states and blue states, right? So all these things are happening. And I often say, it is very important to make sure that you are current in your voting polls, that you do have a state issued ID, and that where the polls are, which polls are open and closed, what time they open and close, and make sure that you get there. And sometimes there will be lines, but you definitely have to wait in those lines because, again, this Voting Rights Act was created, or not created, but it was enforced with our blood, sweat, and tears. And we need to ensure that we can continue to maintain our democratic process of voting. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
That's very, very good information there. It is so important that we continue to educate ourselves and educate those around us on these things that are happening. So I want to ask you one question, Dr. DeCuir, one question. So, Shelby, you mentioned Shelby County versus Holder, right? So yes. It profoundly altered the Voting Rights Act and its enforcement mechanisms. So from your scholarly perspective, how do you believe the Supreme Court fundamentally misunderstood the ongoing and evolving nature of voter suppression? What do you think they misunderstood about that?
I think they misunderstood the systematic issues of racism and the effects that it has on the minority communities, right? They, after a while, when I say they, America, after a while, seems to think that we're all equal when we are not all equal at all. Mm-hmm. And they have to realize that these laws, like the 65 Act, is in place for a reason. As soon as you take those barriers, or not those barriers, but those laws away, then barriers are created to suppress voter rights, especially in minority communities and communities that are not very affluent when you think about monetary means within the United States. And so the Supreme Court did not look at that. They did not understand systematic racism and how that affects African-American people and voting, which is huge.
Yeah, it's I'll call it the myth of a post-racial society.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Doc, before we get out of here, let's do two more things. Play a game with me. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Agree or disagree? The Voting Rights Act has been more symbolically important than substantively transformative. It's been more symbolic than transformative.
Disagree.
Okay. Agree or disagree? Contemporary voting suppression tactics are just as damaging as Jim Crow voter suppression tactics.
Agree. Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. Either or, grassroots organizing or federal legislation. Which one do you think is more effective for protecting voting rights? Grassroots.
Federal legislation.
Legislation. Okay. Fannie Lou Hamer's powerful oratory or John Lewis's strategic activism?
Fannie Lou, because I'm going to go with the girls all the time.
Girl power. There we go. All right. Okay, Doc, that was it. Now, before we get out of here, I always like you to give us some good medicine from the good doctor. So what do you want to prescribe our watchers and listeners today?
I want to say stay woke, even though woke has been, taken out of the vocabulary of America. I want to say make sure you know your history, make sure you know the connections to the events in the past to what is happening in the future, because y'all, it is just a hamster wheel. It's the same shit, a different day.
There it is. You heard the good doctor. Listen, we're coming right back. We're going to talk about something new in a second. Listen, for Dr. Sharlene Sinegal DeCuir, I am Michael Prejean. This has been the network. This is Dr. Sinegal DeCuir's History Quarter, the funkiest 15 minutes in Black history. We're going to see y'all again real soon. Peace.
Peace.